Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about overcoming a bad medical coding audit. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, you have gotten your first really bad medical coding audit. And perhaps you made a lot of mistakes. There were things that you weren't catching, or maybe you were picking up codes that were just not appropriate. You know, it's because you're still learning, right? And so how do you come back from this? How do you come back from this? And how do you reconcile with yourself, like, okay, I'm not going to do this again next time. And how do you say to yourself, let's move on? Okay. So the thing about really bad audits is sometimes it'll come out of nowhere. Like, you will be thinking everything is going great and that you're doing everything right, and then all of a sudden you just hit a brick wall. This happens, guys. It happens with medical coders. It's okay. It's not the end of the world if you get one bad audit. It's not the end of the world if you get a couple bad audits. What is bad is if you don't learn from your mistakes. Now, I say this, of course, in that thinking that this is a legitimate mistake. Sometimes auditors will actually mark you as incorrect when you're actually correct. So always make sure that you're reviewing, what errors they said that you did. Now, a good auditor will explain to you why you are incorrect. And they will give you a reference, a reputable reference, not just because I said so reference. They will give you a reference, a guideline, something in writing that says that they are correct versus, what you had selected. So always make sure that you ask for verification of why these are incorrect. And then, of course, learn from that. Also know this, it is not that the auditor is trying to target you or just try to single you out or anything like that, or that maybe that the auditor doesn't like you. It's not about your feelings about that person. It's about what they're telling you that you did wrong. Now, obviously, if you are correct and you can prove that you are correct, then you need to stand up and say, hey, wait a second. Because according to the AHIMA standards of ethical coding, which apply to everybody, right? You have to be able to stand up and say, well, no, this is the reason that I selected that code. Here is the coding clinic. Here is CPT assistant. Here is something from the guidelines that proves that I'm correct. And then sometimes it's like, okay, it's a human mistake, right? Auditors are human too. So they don't always mark things correctly, right? So just make sure that you are standing up for yourself. Medical coding is about advocating for correct codes. It is about being ethical when we are selecting these codes. It is about defending what is right. And it is not about just because this person says that I'm wrong, I'm automatically going to accept that I'm wrong. Verify that they are correct when they're telling you that you're wrong. And if not, then show them why you selected what you did, so that maybe they can explain, okay, well, no, actually it's this way because of this, this, and this. So really, again, it goes back to communication. You have to be sure that you are communicating with your auditor, so that way you know for sure in the future what you can do to improve. And that's what I will say on that. I will also say that sometimes auditors get a little overzealous and they will just do things that just doesn't make sense. I've had those before too. But I always stand up for like what is right. I don't allow, just because they said that it's wrong, I'm automatically going to assume that they are correct. I'm always going to double check. And that's what you have to do. Because again, we are held to ethical standards, and we have to make sure that we are coding everything appropriately and that we're learning from our mistakes and we're moving on. And just because you may not want to hear that the auditor is telling you that you're wrong, do not continue to do the same thing. I've heard that before too from coders. Well, so-and-so is my auditor and I don't like them, so they told me I did this wrong. I'm going to continue to do it anyway because I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. Now you're wrong, okay? Especially if that auditor has proven that they are correct and you are incorrect. If you continue to do that incorrectly, then you're being unethical, okay? And a slew of other things. Well, let's just talk about ethics for a second. you're being unethical, and that is wrong. Okay, and that is the fastest way to, you know, do the wrong thing. Okay, and you don't want to do that. All right, so it's not about you, and it's not about your ego. It's about what is correct, because at the end of the day, we're still having an effect on the patient and the amount of money that they have to spend for their health care, and the provider and the amount of money that they are able to earn. Because if you are incorrectly selecting codes, then, you know, the provider is either losing money or getting paid too much money. So always think about that. You know, sometimes people don't remember that this is a very selfless field. We have to not consider ourselves and our ego. We have to consider, you know, what is right by what is documented. And if an auditor is telling you, hey, I noticed that you're kind of struggling with your injury coding, right? Just one of the ones, okay? Injury coding. If they're telling you you're struggling with injury coding, you seem to be struggling understanding, you know, your initial injury, your subsequent injury, and your sequelas, then that is where you need to focus your attention to study. Okay, because just because you pass a certification, just because you have your job, it does not mean that you stop studying. You have to continue to study to make yourself better for your field and for, you know, your clinic or wherever you're coding. And so don't ever lose sight of that. You know, coders tend to lose sight of that, and, well, you know, the auditor marked you wrong, whatever, I'll just fix it and it's no big deal. No, guys. You have to understand why, and then you have to work to improve yourself so that this never happens again. Okay, so that it's about improving. You know, a good auditor will make sure that that coder is educated so that the mistake never happens again. And the coder will in turn do their part to say, okay, I'm recognizing that I did this wrong. Maybe I went too fast. Maybe I'm going, you know, just taking, you know, all of these things that don't need to be picked up. You know, I need to do my research on what needs to actually be picked up and what needs to be selected. I need to work on understanding combination codes, because sometimes people forget to do combination codes. You know, hypertension and chronic kidney disease, they're always going to go together, always. Unless in the very, very rare instance that provider says that these are two separate conditions that are not related to each other, which again is a very rare instance. But that's something that you have to be able to recognize. And those little things, they will come with time. But again, remember that the purpose of today's video is to tell you guys that it's not personal when an auditor marks you incorrect. And if you're able to prove that you are correct, then show that you are correct by coding clinic, CPT assistant, the coding guidelines, something that can give you some kind of support as to why you did it, and not just because you thought it was this way. There's something actually that says that it supports your code selection. Okay, and for auditors that are watching this, guys, y'all know, because it's difficult being an auditor, you know, because you're telling people all the time that they're doing wrong, and some people will take joy in that. I've actually had people write in and say, well, I want to be an auditor because I want to tell people that they're wrong. And I'm like, you can't. That's not a that's not a good reason to be an auditor. A good reason to be an auditor is because you want to be an educator, and you want to be able to catch those little details that may be missing, right? Everybody's experience is going to be different. And so that's where, you know, taking seeing how somebody codes this particular thing and then seeing how somebody else codes this particular thing can help that auditor have even more knowledge. Okay, but then it can also help them to help others to know, hey, you missed this, or you missed this, or, you know, why didn't you pick this up? You know, this is clearly marked there. So again, it's all about supporting what we select and what we do. But don't beat yourself up because you got a bad audit. It happens. Every medical coder goes through that. Every medical coder goes through it. But what will make the difference is if it's a pattern. If you continue to do the same thing over and over again, then you may need to either study a little bit more, or you need to find somebody who can kind of help you to understand what's actually happening. Okay, that's always an option. When you are going through these, it does affect, you know, your productivity. Obviously, if you are going really slow, if you're going really fast, it's supposed to be quality over quantity. Now, I have heard that some people say that they have a ridiculously high productivity rate that they need to meet, and they're rushing. You can't do that. Ethically, it's wrong, because we have to be able to process the information that's there, and we need the appropriate amount of time to do it. And, you know, again, it's all about making sure that you understand all this stuff before you go and try to be in a job where the productivity is really high. If the productivity is really high, if it's like 300 a day, I've seen those 320 in a day. I'm like, no, I wouldn't even apply there. I would not for no amount of money, because that's too much stress. And then at that point, you're not even coding. You're just data entering. That's all you're doing, and pushing stuff through. And that's not coding. Okay. At least this is my advice anyway. But watch those details, guys. And it's never a good thing to rush through encounters. You always want to take your time. It's better to take your time on the ones that you need to take time on. And then those ones that are really easy, then you can kind of get through those at a quicker rate. But watch your distractions too. I will say that before I wrap this up. People sometimes make mistakes and it comes out on their audits, because they've been distracted. So if you have a lot of distractions around, maybe somebody's talking to you, or if you're working remotely and you're just getting distracted at home, guys, if you're working remotely, you need to treat this as if you're at the office, and you need to be able to concentrate on what you're doing. If you can't concentrate on what you're doing when you're working at home is probably not for you. Okay? Because again, people who are working remotely are typically held to higher productivity standards, and they have higher accuracy standards as well, because they say that you shouldn't be distracted at all. That's the trade-off. So again, make sure that you're getting in that space where you're really concentrating on what you're doing. Put your phones away. I've seen coders actually with a straight face say that they can't meet productivity, and all of a sudden their accuracy fell, and then you see them right there with their phones. Get off your phones, because again, your phone is no place for the workplace. Doesn't matter if you're at home or if you're at the facility. You need to be able to concentrate. And with medical coding, it's very easy for those details to be missed, because those details can be anywhere. We are not just coding from only one portion of an encounter or a document. We are coding from the entire thing. And so we have to be able to look at the whole thing. And again, if you are being distracted, if you are not taking the time to really concentrate on what you're doing, it's going to show in your audits. And it's not worth it, guys. It's not worth it to blow your audits just because you can't seem to focus. You got to learn to focus. And there's tons of videos on YouTube about improving your focus while you're at work. And so that I will say. And to wrap it up, it is not personal when these auditors are marking you incorrect. Okay? There are some instances, yes, because sometimes not everybody is the same, and I get that. But a lot of times it is not personal. It is just the auditor doing their job. And it is your job to make sure that you are on top of these things, and it is your job to make sure that you understand. You can't depend on people to be training you either, okay? That's why you get into medical coding, because it's very independently run. You can do a lot of things independently, but it's a lot of responsibility when you take out that, like, we need somebody to constantly watch us and things like that. That's why we do medical coding, because it's independent. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. So if you failed an audit, it's okay. You'll come back. You'll bounce back from it. Don't let it hang you up as far as like getting just kind of hamster wheel about it and doing the same thing over and over again. You got to change your approach, so that you can get better. All right, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all again next time. Bye.